Hey guys, so a few people have asked about this paper. I mean, they've more been asking me to mark their stuff rather than the other way around, so feel free to send me stuff for marking if you're actually in my class and not a random person watching these videos. But basically, this is going to be October-November 2023, paper 2-1, and question 10. So the big scary question at the end. So we've got to read all this, but basically it's saying that we have an array called evening, and in the array, it's going to hold the seat numbers or it's going to hold whether the seat has been booked or not. So anyone who's been to a cinema, you've probably can get one, can't we? Cinema selection grid, something like that, probably called, right? So if you've ever been to a cinema, yeah, you've maybe been asked to do something like this and pick the different row and then the different seat that you want to be in the cinema. So we're trying to do something similar to this thing here. Okay, so what do we need for that? Well, it says that we're going to have evening. Now, the evening is going to have 10 rows, I believe, and each of those rows has 20 seats. Now, if the seat is empty, then it's going to be set to be false. So we can do false times 20, and then we can evening dot append the row. And hopefully, if I were to print that, so for row in evening, I should see, if I print the row, I should hopefully see, oh, 4x in range. Oh, yeah. Getting my basic stuff here. It's not good. So here we go. So you see that each row basically has 20 seats. So this is one row which has 20 seats, and nobody has bought any seats in there. Okay. Now, what I probably also want to check for my test data is that if some seats are booked, what's going to happen. So I can do like evening. Bottom left is going to be 0, 0. And if somebody's bought it, it's going to be called true. And then let's have a bunch more of those that we can just fill in some random data on. And the final seat is going to be, what, 9, 19. And then let's do 9, 18. And let's do just some random ones, 3, 12, and 1, 6. Okay, and now when I print it, you should see that like the last seat, the last two seats over here have been set to true. So people are going to be sitting now in the places where it says true. Okay, now, very important, this is not needed. Okay, so it very specifically tells us that you do not need to initialize the array evening. Okay, so this is just for me. I just like to be able to visualize what is going on. And so I tend to give it some test data at the start to think about. You could draw that on the side and or draw it out as a picture, but that's up to you. Okay, and then we get into our actual code. So I think we've kind of done all this actually already. So we just need to focus on what are the requirements. So again, I'm quite lucky. I can just pull the requirements into here and comment them out, whereas you're going to have to copy them out line by line, but also you're going to have to copy them out at the right position when required. Okay, so first of all, we're going to count and output the number of seats already booked for the evening. Well, to do that, I'm going to have to make a variable called count. So one thing that caused a little bit of confusion was the difference between declaration and initialization. Okay, so if I were to declare the variable count in pseudocode, it would be declare count, and it's going to be an integer. Notice that I have not put any data into this variable. I have just made the variable. And so for people who use Python a lot, that's a bit confusing because basically it kind of lumps the declaration and the initialization together. Okay, but if I wanted to initialize count, I'd have to say count equals 0 to begin with. Okay, so just be careful with declaration and initialization, they are not the same. Anyway, so counts and outputs the number of seats already booked for the evening. So basically I want to do a double for loop to loop through these arrays, or this array, 2D array, and any time that the value is equal to true, then I know that somebody has booked the seat. So I can do for x in range 0 to the length of evening. And then I can do for y in range 0 to the length of evening. And I'm going to do square bracket 0 because I know that all the rows are the same length. So I can just pick either any of the rows and say that's going to be the size of each row. Okay, so I'm going to be looping through these two things, but notice I've used x and y. Now this is perfectly fine. It will probably get you the marks. However, for clarity, maybe it would be better to do row and seats. Okay, just so that when we get points for good variable names. So why not? Yeah, it's not a big hassle changing row to row and seat because we know what those mean. And I want to say if evening at the row and at the seat is equal to true, then I'm going to add 1 to my count. So count equals count plus 1, or count plus equals 1, whichever way you want to do it, should be fine. Okay, now this is counting the number of seats available, and then I'm going to output. So I'm going to actually just copy that and put that underneath. So this is counts the number of seats available, and I'm going to output the number of seats available. So I can say print, let's do it as a f, just for a bit of variety, and I can say count seats have been booked for the evening, something like that. Okay, now again, I'm super lucky. I am not writing it by hand, so I can test stuff as we go along, and let's just see if that's working. Whoops. Oh, missed the thingy. There we go. Okay, so 5 seats have been booked for the evening. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yay! That is correct. Okay, cool. So the next bit we're going to do is allows the user to input the number of seats required. So I'm going to ask the user to input the number of seats. I could put required on there. I'm going to not input. I'm going to say enter the number of seats required. And I'm going to change that, whatever they type, it's going to be changed to be an integer. Okay, and then I can maybe put a comment here. Number of seats, integer, to store the number of seats required. Something like that. Okay, validates the input. So, what does it mean by that? Well, if I have a look at my code over here, you'll see that it says up to and including 4 seats can be booked at one time. So basically, if they say 1, that's great, 2 is great, 3 is great, 4 is great, 5, cannot. So we want to do a little while loop here that says, let's do it after the validates. It's going to say while number of seats is less than 1 or number of seats is greater than 4. I'm going to print, sorry, invalid number of seats, let's say max 4. Something like that, okay? And again, clarity is good, so it's better to write out. And then I'm going to ask the same question again until they give me a value that is accepted. Okay, again, I can check it. Enter number of seats required, 19. Sorry, 0. Nope. What if I do 3? Yay! Okay, so checks if enough seats are available. Okay, so, I mean, there's different ways we could do this, but I know there are 200 seats because it's 10 times 20, and my count is already telling me the number of seats that have been booked, so I can say available equals 200 minus the count. So that's how many seats are available. Okay, and then I can say if the number of seats is greater than the number of seats available, then what am I going to do? If they're available, bam, bam. Okay, if they're not available, outputs a message giving them the number of seats left or house full if it's fully booked. Okay, so if number of seats is greater than number of seats available, then I want to say if the available seats equals 0, I'm going to say print house full. And again, if it tells you to type something, don't be creative, just do what they ask. Just else, sorry, isn't it? Else, I'm going to print, I'm going to give you the number of seats available. Sorry, let's do a print F. Sorry, only available seats available. Okay. Okay, so that's doing outputs if they are not available. So I'll put that there, and then I'm going to say house full. Okay, cool. Okay, so if the number of seats is not greater than available, so maybe I've worked it round the other way from what the question asked, but that's not totally important, as long as it works. So if they're available, I'm going to change the status of the seats. Outputs the row, the number, and seat number of each seat booked. Okay, so here I'm going to do something very similar to what I did at the start. So I'm going to go through my different seats and change the status. Okay, now, so number of seats. Okay, so for blah, 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 for da, 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 and I want to say if the, sorry, what I want to say, if evening is going to be row and seat is equal to false, well then I'm going to set the row and evening equal to true, and then I'm going to print out the seat that has been booked. So I can print out seat, let's do a print F again, seat, comma, row, and that's going to be row, and let's do row, blah, comma, seat, seat booked. Okay, so that's going to tell them that they booked that seat. So we've changed this, and then we've said the seat is booked. So that's going to be that bit there. Now, what we haven't counted in is that the number of seats that they're booking. Okay, so now we could use break statements. The exam is not very keen on them generally. Like, they don't really like break statements. So let's avoid them. It's not the most efficient way, but if the row, so 4 seats in evening, so we could say if the number of seats is greater than 0, then we're going to do that. Okay, and then so each time we book a seat, we're going to subtract 1 from the number of seats that they're looking for. Okay, again, I'm not super happy with this line here. I feel like there should be a way more efficient way to do it, but fingers crossed, that should be it. Now let's see, is there anything else I'm missing from the thingy? Count number of seats, house full. If there are enough seats available, change the status of the seats, output the row and the number of the seats booked. Okay, let's see if that works. Now, again, in the exam, if you make tiny little mistakes, as you see I make all the time, you're not going to lose the points. What they're looking for is that the logic is correct. Okay, so fingers crossed. Okay, enter the number of seats required, 3. Okay, row 0, 1 booked, 0, 2 booked, 0, 0, 3 booked. Okay, yay! Now I might want to test it for the negative situation, but that means filling up all the different seats and stuff. But just at first glance, it looks like that worked as hoped. Alrighty, so again, just make sure you get lots of comments. I'd suggest visualizing in advance, and there's a difference between declaring and initializing. Okay, hope that helps. Bye-bye.